Welcome to Is Your Way in Your Way podcast, where your host, Cassandra Crawley Mayo, helps you break free from obstacles and live life on your terms. Get ready to embark on a journey of self-discovery, empowerment, and inspiration. Tune in as we dive into captivating conversations with experts and explore topics that will ignite your passion and drive. Are you ready to unlock your full potential? Let's dive in.
Yes, this is Cassandra Crawley Mayo, and this is my podcast title, Is Your Way in Your Way? And for many of my listeners out there, but I bet I have some new listeners, that's the title of my book, Is Your Way in Your Way? And it's a self-discovery journey. It's a journey, trust me, on how to, it's actually a self-discovery journey. It's about a self-discovery guide for women on how to restore yourself, learn from your experiences, and be your true self. And on this podcast, I like to have guests on with topics related to what I say, personal improvement, self-improvement, even some business improvement. And also, these podcasts are going to enable you to reflect on some things. And I'm always hopeful and prayerful that there'll be something said that will enable you to pivot and start doing what is necessary for you to start living your best life on your terms in the event that you're not living your best life. And if you've not really thought about it, what a great opportunity to think, what is it going to take for me to live my best life? And I have a special guest on, and her name is Heather Stewart. And I'm going to introduce you all. I'm going to get her out of the orange room and put her back in it. Hi, Heather.
I love the orange room. I think the orange room is a great room.
I do too. Thank you so much.
Color. Look, I'm even wearing orange today.
No, I know. Don't tell them I sent you the memo. It's about wearing orange. Hey, then listeners, this topic today is titled, You Are the CEO of Your Work. I think that is so profound because when I was in my corporate jobs, I would always say, well, I'm the CEO of this, that would help me put things in perspective, and so I'm loving this title and just can't wait to talk about it. So Heather and my audience, I'm going to read a little bit of Heather's bio just so you can get some information about her to kind of get you to say, oh, now I understand why she's qualified to do the work that she's doing. So Heather Stewart is a dynamic force in the wellness world. She seamlessly marries her background in corporate finance. That sounds familiar. With her fervent dedication to holistic health to help guide transformative coaching experiences for her clients. She found her own escape from the societal expectations of a career at the expense of health and vitality, and now helps other midlife women do the same. She uses her Thriving Life Method framework to help. She helps overwhelmed overachievers, oh my gosh, connect to their inner purpose so they can intentionally create a new roadmap to the life they were meant to live. She is also a host of her own podcast titled Back to Me, and she's helping guide wellness your way. Wow. When I was reading this, I'm like, overwhelmed high achievers. Well, I tell you, I was so overwhelmed and it made me think, was I a high achiever? And then when I go to the gym and people said, there's that high achieving girl. And I'm like, oh, I guess I was. And I was overwhelmed, but I'm not overwhelmed when I'm working out. But boy, was I overwhelmed in the corporate world. I tell you.
Well, it's funny that you say that because I think overachievers don't have any idea that they are overachievers, right? It's like, I just want to do everything and be everything and be 100% at everything all at the same time.
Exactly.
And you don't know until you crash. You're like, oh, that wasn't healthy.
Oh my gosh,
Right.
have I crashed a number of times? And you are so right. You are so right. And I actually heard somebody talk about the other day how if you think about it, you're trying to do everything at work and you're overwhelmed. And she said something like this. She says, you know what? If you got everything done at work before you left for the day, you wouldn't have a job. And I was like, oh, that's an interesting way of looking at it. So I like that perspective. But it sounds like, Heather, I'm curious. What was your life like before you escaped a career at the expense of your health and vitality. What was life like?
Right. So I was a CPA for 15 years. I had the big house in the suburbs. I was married. I had the company car. I had the stock options. It was funny because I tell people I had a 5-bedroom house and it was just for me and my husband and my 2 cats.
Oh,
It's like, why? And, because I wanted a big house,
right.
I had to live far away from work. So I spent a lot of time in the car. This was before podcasts were a big thing. And,
Sure.
and I was successful. If you measured against everything that people tend to measure against these days, I was super successful because I had all of the things you're supposed to have. I had all of the material things, but I worked really hard. I spent 12 hours a day sitting at a desk, and it's just not good for you. So there was a study done at one point where it even said, even if you work out an hour every single day, if you spend extended periods of time sitting and in any capacity, you're still at increased risk for heart disease. Because if you think about, like I think about this in terms of blood flow. So think of a stream, every now and then a flood of water might come through, but if it sits stagnant most of the time, gunk is going to build up. Yeah. So that's how I kind of translate it into the body. So your gunk is going to build up and make you prone for illness if you sit a lot. And so I was having a conversation one day with a friend who I worked with. And it's funny, even 20 years later, I still go out for dinner with these friends whenever we can get together. And I was coming to the end of a project and I was due for another promotion.
Oh, gosh.
And my husband, he's my ex-husband now, my husband at the time, he wouldn't have admitted it, but he was a little annoyed that I kept getting promoted because he wanted promotions. And I because, and people say, why would you complain about a promotion? Because it's recognition, because it's like, wow, you're doing so well. But on the inside, like my inner self was saying to me, yeah, great. They recognize that you work hard and you do what you're supposed to and you're diligent and you're responsible and you can do all of this. But you're trading your life for dollars.
Yes.
And I kind of went one day, I was talking to my friend. I said, I don't want another promotion. I said, it's just going to mean more work. More money, whatever. But I was like, how much is enough? I don't need anything else. I don't need more money. I need more time for myself to even just to, go for a walk. It's like anything to help me remove myself from work. So that was when that project was coming to an end. I saw this fork in the road and I said, okay, I'm going to go the way that people don't usually go.
Right.
And I quit.
Oh my gosh, you just quit. Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
You had a revelation. Like
I had no plan, which was I had no plan, but except that I knew that I had to leave. And the only way that I was going to be able to develop a plan was to be out of that space. Now, for some people, that's just too much. That would be more overwhelming than staying in the job.
Yeah.
But my job was just, everything was just too much. So, and what I actually did, like full transparency, I left my job, I sold my house, and I got divorced all within a 3-month period. Yeah.
The 5-bedroom house.
Yes.
Did the cats come with you?
The cats, because what actually ended up happening was I went to India. So I sold my house and quit my job. I bought it to India. So my cats went to my sister and my niece and my nephew. So they stayed in the family. because
Okay.
I love my cats, but I didn't know how long I was going to be gone. So I just said, can the kids look after my cats while I'm gone? And then they just ended
Yeah.
up staying there.
Oh, really? I call what you did. You had a lot of courage. Boy, were you brave. And did you have a comfort zone? It's like, hey, I'm just gonna quit and move on, sell the house. So that comfort zone, that was pretty amazing, I would say. So
Well,
listening
it's
to you, uh-huh.
it's very interesting. Like people say, they're stuck in their comfort zone. And I was very I was comfortable. Yeah, and it's so interesting. This last night I dreamt about zombies, which I don't watch zombie movies. I don't know why I was dreaming about zombies, but it's almost like you're hypnotized. You go to work. It's like the Dunkin' Donuts guy. Time to make the donuts. Time to make the donuts, and you just get stuck in this cycle and you don't think about it. But when I started to step outside and look at my life, I said, "Oh, that's not what I want." And
Mhm.
it can feel, and then that becomes uncomfortable. Seeing what you're doing and realizing that's not actually what you want, that becomes more
Mhm.
uncomfortable than being in that routine. At least for me, it did. Now, for some people,
Mhm.
like I had a friend who took me to lunch when this was all happening, who was prepared to take me down to the psychiatric unit.
Uh-huh.
He was completely serious.
Okay.
He thought I had like lost my
Yeah.
mind.
Mhm.
And he took me to lunch because he said, I had to look you in the eye to make sure that
That you
you were not completely insane. And I'm like, all I did was leave my job.
leave it
People get
down.
divorced every day. Like, what's the big deal?
Uh-huh.
But it was so entrenched with them that that's who I was, that they
Right.
couldn't see that there was another possibility.
Another another possibility with Heather. You said something I thought was interesting. You said that there was no such thing as a work-life balance. And I want
Yeah.
to hear more about that because when I was working in corporate, I used to always say that's the problem. That I used to say, okay, I'm working 50, 60 hours. I mean, literally, like you. It
Yeah.
was it was just crazy. And then the executives would say, well, here's this opportunity. Why don't you want it? I'm like, I don't want that. I don't want more. I'm like, I need to have a work-life balance. And so I thought that would be the answer. And I'm
So
like,
did
well,
I.
yeah, and how do you do that? So you say there's no such thing. Why do you say that?
Well, I say that because, and I had a debate one day with someone because I used to give webinars on this, free webinars. And the disconnect is you're trying to take this thing called work and say, that's work and that's over there. The rest of my
Uh-huh.
life is over here. But
Uh-huh.
doesn't count as my life. I'm going to try and chop it in half and leave that over
Mhm.
there with something that I
Mhm.
have to do the rest of my life. I'm going to live over here. But in reality,
Mhm.
it has to be incorporated into your life.
Mhm.
So instead of trying to separate your work and the rest of your life,
Yes.
I actually look at 6 things, because balance is like place where nothing's moving. It's like you have to hold your breath and not move. Where I think more of harmonizing. Sometimes stuff is going to go up. Sometimes you're working a little more. Sometimes you can work a
Mhm.
little less. So it's almost like you're harmonizing these
Mhm.
parts so that they can
Mm.
support each other. So,
Mm.
and I
Okay.
love acronyms. So the parts spell the word become. There's 6 of them. The first one, and they're in no particular order, but except
Okay.
that they spell the word become. So there's your body. So you got to think about your physical wellness.
Mhm.
There's your emotional wellness, like
Mhm.
how you're feeling emotionally day to day. There's your community, which is your relationships, whether it's close relationships, like we all have our solar
Sure.
system of people around us,
Yeah.
how they support us or don't support us. There's your occupation. And even for people who are retired, I have a client who's retired who calls what she does her beloved vocation. My husband is retired. His occupation is he delivers food 5 days a week on his bicycle for the food bank. He
Oh,
delivers food
wow.
boxes. And
Mhm.
he loves his job.
Mhm.
He sees it as his job, even though it's
Yes.
volunteer. There's your financial wellness. M is your money, because
Mhm.
we we require coin of the realm. Is that a dog?
Yes, that's Max. Many of my listeners know about Max, and every now and then he wants you to know that he's in the house.
All right, Max. We love you.
I know. Max, be quiet. Oh my gosh. Okay.
So that's all right. I love animals. There's your money, your financial health. Yeah. And that doesn't mean you have to have $1 million in the bank. That doesn't mean that you're living on the street. It's like, do you have enough for what you need and what you want and to achieve what you want in life? And then there's E, which is engagement, which for me is yours. I needed an E, your spiritual health, which doesn't tie to a religion. It's a greater purpose, feeling like you're on your soul mission, whatever that is for you, just something bigger. So thinking about those 6 things as we work on harmonizing them, that's where the thriving life method. That's the part of it, right? So we take a look. And we look regularly, say, okay, how am I doing right now? Like, is my job really low right now and kind of sucking me down? And is there something, if I did something to help me bring the level of that back up, it will support the other parts. And one of the easiest examples is always physical health. So when you're sick, and not feeling well, your emotions, you feel bad, you might, be crabby with your husband or your partner or your friends because you don't feel good. If you're a solopreneur, you can't work, so your money's affected. Where if you're super physically healthy, it's going to support everything else you do. But it's true of all of the different pieces. They each support each other. They're all interconnected. And sometimes there's just one little keystone that if you can get that one working a little bit better, it'll help the other ones rise because one rising lifts all the others. So for work, if you're working 60 hours a week, it's going to make you physically unwell. You are going to be crabby when you go home. If you ever even, it's going to affect your sleep, which affects your emotions. You might make lots of money. It's, that's great. Your money will be fine, but you might not feel like you're achieving your life purpose. You might feel like you're wasting your life. Right. Now, nothing is ever wasted, but it just may not be how you wanted to spend it. Right.
Exactly. It reminds me of one of the things my mom used to say: if you don't have your health, you don't have anything. And when you talked about synchronization, I was thinking about an orchestra, a symphony. And you talked about, I read that you were talking about the higher power, your higher power, you can't go wrong with it. So I was, so thinking about that, I was like, okay. And that higher power is what I say, the conductor for the symphony, right? Yeah. Just based on, what you just shared. Now, but Heather, you're on a mission, and your mission is to inspire self-replenishment. Okay, and I loved it when you said keeping your well full. Where did that? Well, let me ask you this. First of all, what do you specifically do when you talked about coaching and you have that method and and it sounds like, based on what you were saying and how you were feeling, you sold a home, you went here, it sounds like you are qualified to do the type of work that you do, right? So with that, tell the listeners, what specifically is it? Just coaching to fill your mission?
So it's interesting. So if like my mission is to help everyone be connected to what it is they're here for and live that life fully, whatever that is. And I use sometimes the example of, it doesn't have to be the Hollywood version. It doesn't have to be, an Instagram influencer. There's a garden that I walk by when I walk to work, and it's so beautiful in the summer, the flowers. And I usually stop and look at it. And I thank that person energetically for this garden. And maybe their whole purpose in this life is to create something beautiful like a garden for people to look at.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
So I preface it by saying, people's missions don't have to be so huge that it's just, there has to be a big voice man speaking over top of it.
Yeah.
It can be something simple because small things make big differences in the world. So my small thing is, for each person that I help, I want them to be able to shine their light, and that ripples out to the people they connect with and the people they connect with. So, the little ripples can make bigger waves. And the way that I help people is I do one-on-one coaching. And when I do one-on-one coaching, it's entirely dictated by the person that I'm helping. I'm holding that space for them and helping them, like diving into what it is that's going on with them and what they want. And then we start to figure out, okay, what's our first move? What's our next move? But I also do it as a DIY that is a pre-recorded session. And that gives you the pieces, because some people just want to do it themselves. And I get that, because look at everything that I've done. I mean, I've filled my toolbox with, I want some of that. And I've been teaching yoga for 20 years. I've been a personal trainer for 20 years. I teach Tai Chi, you name it. I wanted to go and try it out and do it. And that's part of the reason I say people are never stuck, because I'm like, go do something different. So I've filled my well by being curious and filling up all these things. But what I've discovered is all of the things that I've learned and gained and worked on myself, it helps other people to get some perspective. I can see what's going on for them in a way that maybe they can't. So maybe I can just shine a light for them. So when I'm doing the DIY people, of course, they have access to, jump into community and have conversations, because I have a free community. And then there's a group coaching part of it as well. So the people who are on the group coaching have the videos, but then they have regular meetings as a group too, because I find because I'm part of my own groups that I love to meet with, when I'm in those groups, I know I can be myself and there will be no judgment. And the people there are there to support me and want me to be successful. So I can bring my dirty laundry, whatever it is that day, or something I'm having a hard time with, because the people that I'm supporting will think, wow, her life is perfect. Everything is amazing. But I'm human.
That's right.
Not every day is sunshine and unicorns.
That's the truth.
But at the same time, I know that the sunshine and the unicorns are just behind the cloud. So I just have to work to clear the cloud.
That's right. Because the sun is always out. That's
the
right.
sun is always shining somewhere.
That's right. It is. It's just behind the clouds. Right?
Yeah.
Ready to design your dream life? Join Cassandra Crawley Mayo's Create and Design Your Best Life workshop. Break free from self-doubt and obstacles and step into a life of purpose and fulfillment. Click the link in the description to register now. Don't wait. Spaces are limited. Start living your best life today.
I don't know if you've ever read any Thich Nhat Hanh, but way back when I was in university, this was even before I was practicing yoga. This was before I knew anything. I don't even know how I got this book by Thich Nhat Hanh. And the thing that I remember of it is he was talking about, when he was sad, there'd be a flower. He said, it's okay. The flower is holding my smile for me. I'm like, wow, that's really, maybe that was like one of those, here's a book, you're going to remember this later.
I know.
The universe delivers.
Wow. So you said you talked about stuck. What are your suggestions as a first step when a person feels stuck? What should they do?
So I do a couple of things with people. One is, depending on what kind of resources they have, I love a whiteboard, but I have a client who just has big sheets of paper. You just write down everything about why you are stuck. And if you're stuck, do you even know where you're trying to get to? Like you might say, I'm stuck. but where are you trying to get? Maybe it's just you haven't seen the exit sign, right,
Right.
for the
Yeah,
highway.
that's
So
right. Mhm.
write down everything you want and
Mhm.
all the reasons you can't have it,
Mm.
and then step back and
Okay.
ask yourself, is all that true?
Right. I
Because
love it.
it's not. Like, I've known people who were unhappy with their job and they were
Mhm.
actually up for retirement. They were even
Mm.
offered retirement and they turned it down because they thought no, I have to keep my job because I have to keep my house and my truck and my camper and my cottage and et cetera, et cetera, et
That's
cetera,
right.
et cetera. I'm like,
Yeah.
so I said, well, what if, because their house was winterized and they wanted to live at their cottage was winterized and they really wanted to be at the cottage. I'm like, what if you just sell the house and sell
Mm.
some of the toys that you don't
Mhm.
use anymore and just live and be happy? Well, no, I can't do that because.
Yes.
So all
Yeah.
of those because, the yeah, buts and the becauses, when you write them down and you look at them and you say, but is that really true? And be
Right.
honest.
That's right. That's right.
Sometimes we're just avoiding making a change. Sometimes our excuses are just because we're afraid of something, not of either not being successful and we're afraid we're going to look stupid,
Mhm.
or we're going to be successful and what if we are successful? Oh my gosh, what does that mean?
And what
Which is
exactly.
just as bad.
Exactly. Yeah. Now, Heather, this is to me is amazing. When you had enough and you knew that the finance piece wasn't something that you really wanted to do anymore. Um, After that, now that just didn't come up one day. You were kind of mulling over that for a little while.
Yeah.
And yeah, and when you did that, did you know then what it is you wanted to do? Did you know you knew
No.
one thing that would give you pieces? You didn't your time was your time. Like you weren't working hours, that was something you didn't want to do. So you had no idea what it was that you really wanted to do. But
Yeah,
you knew it wasn't that.
I had been taking yoga after work when I was
Uh-huh.
in corporate. So this was like for a year, I had been taking yoga after work as trying to give myself some headspace to figure
Mhm.
out what I did want,
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
like people will say, you just quit just like that. And on the outside, it looks like that. But on the inside, people don't know the processes going on the inside when you're working through that.
Oh,
So
yes.
I had been going to yoga after work. And one day I was rushing to yoga and I live in Toronto and I was going through a very busy intersection. I was driving and there was a pedestrian in front of me and I was like cursing, what are you doing in the road? Why are you trying to get killed? You know, and I looked up and my light was red and her light was green. And I had
Oh,
no idea that I was driving through a red
wow.
light. I'm amazed I
Oh,
didn't die because
yeah.
it's not a calm intersection and on the best
Mhm.
of days. And I got to yoga and I told my teacher, and I was still in shock. I'm like, how, how did I not kill anyone? And she said, oh, that's interesting. She said, what do you suppose that's all about? And that's kind of all she said. So the
Uh-huh.
whole yoga class, I'm thinking about this. I'm thinking I was rushing. I was
Yes.
hurrying to try to get somewhere so I could relax. I'm like, well, that doesn't seem right, first of all,
Right. Mhm. Mhm.
and
Mhm.
why can't I be in that state on a regular basis? What about work is doing that? So that work, will I ever be able to do that in that work? No, I don't think I can. I know there's people who love it. So I need to take myself out of that. And because I was really into yoga, I decided, well, I'll go to India and I'll just go where yoga comes
Oh,
from and I'll travel around.
okay.
So that was really the extent of my plan. And
Oh.
interestingly, one of the people that I had been studying yoga with, I didn't know this person. I'd only known this person for about 6 months. Um, Lived in a different place. He lived in Kitchener. I lived in Toronto. He worked for the YMCA. I was a corporate person. But
Right.
one day he told me he had been to India. So I said, oh, can I have coffee with you and ask you about your trip to
Yeah.
India? Because I wanted to do a little bit of, where am I
Research.
going?
Yeah. Mhm.
And he brought, this was back in the day when people developed photos. He brought a photo album. People don't
Oh,
do that anymore. I don't get
I
it.
know.
But he brought pictures for me, and I was asking him questions. And he said to me, I said, oh, well, and he said, what are your plans? I said, well, and this was in like June, I think. And in October, I had planned to go to, actually, I went in September. I was going to go to India. He said, oh, that's so interesting. He said, I'm actually quitting my job and I'm going back to India. And I
Oh,
just went, what?
oh,
I barely
wow.
knew this fellow. I just went to coffee with him because I wanted to ask him questions. So we ended up going together and we
Mhm.
traveled around. And 20 years later, we're still together.
You married him?
Yeah. This was
Oh
not my plan. This was
my
not my
God.
plan. But
Awesome.
it was so interesting that it was just like the universe just said, oh, I'll just send them off to India together. And if they can get through that, they'll be fine because it's a
What
challenging place
a
to travel. So,
what a great story. I love that.
yeah.
So listen,
And
so
life,
the rest.
if you let the magic happen
Mm,
and you don't fight against it and you don't argue against it, then
mhm,
the magic can happen. I think it's our
mhm.
resistance to how we
Change.
think things should be.
Mhm.
Like if I thought, no, I should be a vice president and I should make six figures and I should have this,
I should
then
on, huh?
yeah, I should all over myself.
That's
But
right.
because I said, well, this isn't how I want to live my life right now. So what? Then I just opened myself up to what is the possibilities of the options. And it can be super scary, I understand, to
Mhm.
leave your job and not have a plan of
Right.
what
I
you don't have a
know.
plan. Now, when I came back, because I came back, I promised my grandmother I would come back for Christmas. So I came back for Christmas. And when I came back, I knew what I wanted to do. Because I had that time to just not think about anything. So I actually went back to school for 2 years and I
Oh,
became a registered massage therapist. Here, it takes 2 years of school
uh-huh.
and very intense studying because it's a medical professional here, um,
Mm.
and exams, board exams. And I was a massage therapist for 14 years
And you're in
and I
Canada.
loved it. I'm in Canada. Yes.
Uh-huh. Oh my gosh. Well,
Yeah.
that's interesting because you said this is what you said. You said that if you stand up and take charge of your life, what will happen? And you said whatever will happen, you may not like when you stand up. What did you mean by that?
Maybe.
Because you stood up now, you took charge. And what?
Yes.
Well, tell
Some of
me
the
about
stuff I didn't like,
that. Uh-huh.
some of the reactions people had, some
Uh-huh.
of the people that I thought were my friends were not prepared to go with me on that trip. Um, I'm not saying it was easy to sell my house and downsize to a 1-bedroom apartment. I'm not saying that the whole
Wow.
thing was easy,
Sure.
but at the time, I felt
Wow.
like the option was harder. Staying somewhere where I was so stressed
Yes.
and feeling like I felt like there was a big vacuum sucking the life out of me, like fluorescent
Mm.
lighting. I don't know if you saw, was it Joe on the Mountain or something? The fluorescent
Mm.
lights pulling his life out of his eyeballs.
Yeah.
So I felt like it's like when you start anything, the beginning's never easy because you're learning
Yeah.
how you're going to navigate something new. Even when you change jobs, even if
Yeah.
you're in the same
That's
profession, when
right.
you change jobs, it takes you at least 3 months to figure out
Mhm.
how that job's going to work, who to
Exactly.
talk to, how to navigate this, where's the bathroom, where's the printer, like all of these things.
Right.
um, and we're okay when we change jobs, but we won't allow that when we want to change our lives. We want it to be
Right.
fine instantly. We want it to be like TV. Prince
Right.
Charming kissed me and we lived happily ever after.
Exactly. Exactly. And I love it when you talked about how you use a GPS to find direction, but what about your personal life? Right?
Well,
I love
yeah,
that.
yeah. I mean,
Wow.
you could ask Chat GPT. I have someone, someone who I know who asked Chat GPT, you know, it's almost like they're using it as their psychologist, but it's
Right.
just going to take information off the internet and sprinkle you with whatever it
Mhm.
can find.
Mhm. Mhm.
But you've already got your own inner GPS. You're just not listening to it.
Right. So you have to like yourself get quiet. Take
Quiet is the
get
best.
out all that other stuff and just come home to yourself.
And I know
Yeah.
people can't run off to India for 3 months or wherever to a Bali for 3 months to quiet their mind.
Yeah.
That was just kind of my approach
But
because
yeah.
when I decide to do something, as my husband says, you just kind of dive right into it.
Yeah.
I'll wait and wait and wait, and then when I decide to do it, I'm
You
in.
do it. Wow.
Apparently, my mother said I never bothered to crawl when I was a baby. She
You
said you
just
just sat there for a while, and then one day you stood up.
oh my gosh.
So it's built in.
Wow.
But
Yeah.
knowing that people like it doesn't work for some people, but they
Mhm.
need the headspace.
Mhm.
And I have a daily meditation practice, but there are people who resist saying I can't meditate, which I don't totally agree with. But instead of arguing, I just say, okay, then don't. But
Right.
5 to 10 minutes a day, I want you to sit and stare out the window and daydream. That's all.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
Because
Wow.
if you think about the two parts of your brain, so there's your logical problem solving brain, which is a very handy thing to have. It has tasks, it solves the problems, and it takes actions.
Right.
Then you have your creative side of your brain, which is um, dreamy and inventive and makes connections that aren't
Mhm.
necessarily logical. And it's just so creative that if we're always in the task brain, you can't let your creativity
That's true.
and your ability
That's
to
true.
daydream is on the creative side. So by turning off the task brain and just giving it like a coffee break, give it a coffee
Yes.
break and let yourself daydream and not think about anything in particular. That's when connections come. That's when problems get solved. That's when ideas come. That's
Mhm.
why people get ideas in the shower because they're
Yes.
not necessarily thinking about anything.
Yeah.
So instead of telling people to meditate, I just ask them to look at a tree for 10 minutes and daydream about nothing in particular, because it gives them some of that headspace they need to be able to recognize the things they like. And,
Right.
that's also where your higher self will be able to come in and talk to you and
Mhm.
maybe give you solutions that you hadn't even thought of.
I love that, Heather. I'm gonna intentionally start doing that. This is that overachiever that I didn't really think that I was, and I'm like you talked about the brain, the creativity, the logic, and I'm like, okay, I got to do this, I got to do that, got to do
Yeah.
this, got to do that, and I'm like, well, when do I turn it off? I turn it off because when I go to bed, because I'm so tired, I just fall asleep. But it's kind of like give yourself some grace, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, like love yourself.
And athletes take rest days, right?
Yeah,
So people who
yeah,
use their body take rest days. But we people who are very thinkers, doers, we never
oof,
give ourselves a rest day.
I
And some
know.
people, like you might rest when you go to bed. Because I have this habit of thinking, some nights I can't go to sleep because my brain is still working. I'm like, you
Nope,
guys,
that's right.
it's time to
That's
go
right.
on break.
That's
So I
right.
actually have to do a breath practice or some kind of meditation or something while I'm in bed so I can go to sleep.
Calm yourself down. That's
Yeah.
good. That's good. I I like to we were talking before before we came on today, and I said, I don't I like you indicated, I could keep talking and asking you questions because I'm thoroughly enjoying this. But I like us to pivot over to the call to action that you have for the
Right.
listeners, because I've been through it. Um, Love it. Haven't You may see my name come up. Oh, Cassandra was, and it's I like it because it's a link to help you move closer to your best life. And that's I'm the
Yeah.
creator of living your best life on your terms. I love that. And I'd like for
See,
you
that's
to
beautiful.
yes. And I want you to share a little bit about that because in the show notes, I'm going to put the link in the show notes and let's kind of not entice, but to inspire people to really want to go in that link and start get closer to what their best life is.
Right. So this is our thriving life map.
Okay.
And it's it gives you kind of the structure of that thriving life, though that become. And it takes you through a series of prompts. There's a little workbook to download, like nothing major. Don't let it go to your PDF graveyard. That's what I always tell people. Don't let it go to your PDF graveyard.
Yeah,
I
be there.
encourage people, if you download it, print it out.
Uh-huh.
I love having the paper, the physicality of the thing to look at. And when it's printed out, then I'll do something with it instead of just filing it. But what
Right.
it's going to do is, and it's going to take you through some ideas like of that harmonizing those 6 areas. And what I like about it is you don't have to be any particular way because you can only be your way. So having that ability, it helps you step back and really look, how am I doing? And you don't
Yeah.
have to share this with anybody else. This isn't a judgment of
Mhm.
whether you are good or bad or right or wrong, because none of that is true. It's just a measurement. Where am I right now? Okay. What's
Nice.
working right now? Okay.
Mhm.
What's not working right now? Okay. And okay, so how am I going to start to shift? So it's just going to take you through those little steps. And and you hear this all the time at the new year, I'm going to do this, I'm going to change my life, but then you don't take an action for change to happen. You have to realize you want something different. You have to
Yeah.
decide what you want, and then you have to actually take an action because people will decide what they want and then they'll forget to actually do anything about it. And then a
Right.
year later they say, oh, I'm in the same place I was. Well, I
That's
guess I'm
right.
a failure. But you're
Mhm.
not a failure. You just forgot a step.
Yeah. Wow. That's great. Sounds like the wheel of life.
And when you take an action, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. That doesn't mean you're a failure either. That's just like feedback. Oh, that one didn't work. Okay, I'll try
So let me
this.
try this.
So you
That's
imagine
right.
inventors, like you're inventing your life in a way. So if you imagine
Mhm.
inventors when they were trying to invent electricity or invent the telephone or the light bulb, can't remember, Thomas Edison I can't even remember how many times he had to invent
A lot.
things.
Right. And
Did a
fail.
lot. But
Yes.
yet we have light bulbs now because he
That's
said,
right.
oh, that didn't work, but he kept
Mhm.
trying.
Yes,
So
you
you're
did.
allowed as many tries as you want on
Mhm.
your life till you
That's right.
find the one that works.
Exactly. And if you don't
But
try,
don't
you'll
give
never
up.
know. That's right.
But
That's
don't
right.
give up. Don't
Right.
give up.
Wow. So you gave a lot of, so in other words, when I think about all we've talked about, you have provided some tools, even some testimonies, I say, about your life on how you're going to be the CEO of your work, regardless. You're
Your
in
work is
charge.
your life, right?
Exactly, exactly. And we're not just here to be here. We all have something. We're ordained to do something. And I'm just
Yeah.
hopeful that many of my listeners will share this podcast. They will get in touch with you. I'm going to ask you for they can get in contact with you, even though you got a lot. Places where they can get in touch with you. But what I really get out of this, I love the part, the chief executive officer of your work. You are responsible for you. And as we talked earlier, we talked about what you can control. And you were like, well, what you control is your reaction because life's going to throw you a lot of stuff.
Oh, yeah.
So I really like these individuals, my listeners, that remember you are the CEO of your work. And Heather, thank you so much. I don't know if you have any more wisdom that you could share with my listeners, because some of them are stuck. And a
Some of them
lot of
are.
them don't like what they're doing, but they're like, so what am I going to do? They can be Heather Stewart, or just be true to themselves and figure this thing out. Because when you're open and you're ready, that's when the teachers appear.
Right.
Right.
Don't necessarily jump off of my cliff, because that was my cliff.
That's right.
And the best way for you to, when you're stuck, the best thing to do is start with one tiny thing that feels like it's safe for you to do. And you can start to see the ripple through your life. Sometimes I just say to people, get 8 hours of sleep a night. It'll change your life. Right.
Yeah, that's true.
So, you know, if that's a place to start, be okay with that. We are not in the Fast and the Furious. We are taking our time.
Right.
Because if I want my life to be the way I want it, I don't want to rush. I don't want to rush my decisions, but I want them, but I don't want to also not make a decision.
Right. And as they say, the race is not given to the swift, but for those who endure.
And I always say, what are you in such a rush for? You know where the finish line is, right?
Yeah, right. Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, Heather, thank you so much for being a guest on my show. I really enjoyed it. And my listeners, and tell my listeners where they can contact you, although it's going to be in the show notes. But
the easiest place to find everything is heatherstewart.coach, because everything is up there.
Okay, great. Thank you again, my listeners. Please share this with individuals where you know this will be a blessing. And also know that this podcast will be on all podcast platforms. And again, Heather, thanks for your wisdom. And thank you so much for being my guest. My listeners, as I always say, God bless you and bye for now. Thank you again, Heather.
Thank you. Bye.
Hey, thanks for listening. If you've been enjoying our empowering conversations, make sure you don't miss out on future episodes of Is Your Way in Your Way podcast. Stay in the loop with all the latest episodes. Join our mailing list over at CassandraCrawley.com. And before you go, hit that like button, share with your friends, and subscribe now. Until next time, let's get ready to live your best life.